Thanks, everybody. Oh, wait, let me let some people in. Robert Allen, Trish, Andy Heppel. Hi, everybody. Hi, Robert.
Hi, Robert. Hi, Andy. Nice to see you.
Andy Heppel is on. Trish is joining. And we are all here for episode 6 of the Trades Accelerator session. Lewis Allen is jumping on the call now as well. And we are at the penultimate of this episode of this series. It feels like a wild ride. How do you feel, Alison?
Oh, yes.
An adventure.
Like I've had a wild ride, absolutely.
Time flies, but we've been covering the fundamentals, what you need to know step by step, these milestones in your business growth. So marketing, lead management and conversion, recruitment, hiring, and now finally we're at leadership, leading the team. I'm so excited for this one in particular. And, you hire the team, but then you've got to keep it, right? Keeping the talent. Recruitment, I know that you, Alison, I'm going to give it all to you now, but I just want to share my experience. Recruitment can be such a big investment and such a risk if you get it wrong. And so keeping that team, leading the team, keeping them motivated, and keeping them inspired and putting that fuel into your business so you have a healthy business. We all need to learn to do that better in terms of we can all be better leaders. So without further ado, Alison Warner, coach, speaker, author, and extraordinary person.
I don't know about that.
This is up to you. Please teach us, tell us all about leading a team.
I'd love to. Thank you, Francis. And hello, everybody. Lovely to see some familiar faces. Actually, what you need to do is give me hosting rights, please.
Hosting, right. Yeah. Share.
Then,
you can share your screen.
And then I can share my screen.
Yeah.
So as Francis has just said there, we've gone on a bit of a journey. Hopefully you can see my slides here. Taking you through really the different steps in running a business, starting with the marketing and the managing of the leads, and I think we did one on time management, and then recruitment. So at this point, ideally we should have the perfect person for the role. Now, in my experience, and this is both in corporate land and in working with small businesses, often what happens at this stage is we relax because we've had a vacancy, we've been looking for the ideal person, we've found them, and we think, it's done. There's actually a step before induction. I'm going to talk about induction and how crucial that is in a moment, but there's actually a step before that, when I think of it, around keeping the new employee warm. So often what can happen is that person, once you've offered them the job, they go back to their current employer, and the current employer in recruitment language does what we call counter offering. And so they say, oh, no, please don't leave, especially if they're good, and they'll offer them more money and convince them to stay. So it's very, very important that, let's say that person has 4 weeks notice to serve. It's really, really important that you're keeping in contact with them. And I would get a bit creative and invite them in to meet with the team. If you've got any team socials, invite them along to the team social. Anything that you can do to keep the dialogue going and keep them excited about joining is a good step. But then we come to induction. So as I said on the copy for inviting you to this, I'm going to go through the one thing to get right before they even start. I'm going to talk about the difference between attitude and skill, so where it can sometimes go wrong, some structures and habits, a simple technique to lead a team, and then the 5 things that can demotivate and motivate each of us, and it can be different for each of us. So starting with induction. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go through a lot of content here, and Francis, you might chip in with some questions at different points. I would grab your pen, grab a bit of paper, because I'm going to be going through this kind of quite quickly, top line, covering quite a lot of content. So induction. The first thing here is to plan for their arrival. What you don't want is them coming in on their first day and just, getting straight down to it, or giving them some menial tasks. You want to show that you've actually thought about them coming in and joining the company. The ideal would be on their first day to sit down with them, have a coffee, and ask them, what does success look like? You might not want to use that exact language, but ask them, great to have you on board. If this was to be, your ideal job, and I very much hope it is, what sort of things are important to you? What are your expectations for this? And listen to all of that and make notes, because hopefully if they open up and are honest, they'll be giving you some real nuggets there to understand, how best to manage them, and what their expectations are. And then you can then share your expectations. I'm going to come on to in a moment to something called the What Good Looks Like document, which in corporate land is known as a competency framework, but it's essentially a list of expectations, behavioral expectations of what good looks like within your company. And I would at that point share that with them, and I'd give them some examples around, what you expect. If you've got company values, I'd talk about your values. If you've got a vision for, say, 3 years out for the company, I would talk about your vision. I'd talk about what makes you different and what you feel proud about your company. So you're giving them a real flavor around what you stand for. And hopefully this should be A, clear, and B, very excited now around the company that they've joined. And they should feel valued as well. The fact you haven't just, brought them in, given them to somebody else to look after and stuck them in at the deep end. You're actually putting some time in to their first day, and it shows that you care. So really, really important. And think about from there on, maybe the next 2 weeks or 4 weeks, depending on what the role is, what that training plan could look like. It shouldn't be you doing all of the training. They should be spending time with different individuals, but just to give them some kind of structure, some sort of framework to show that you have thought about it, you have planned it, and you know what they need to learn and what they're going to be learning on each day and who they're going to be spending time with. There is a lot of research done, there's books written about the correlation between somebody's first experience in their first 90 days and how likely they are to stay and do a good job for you. So there's actually a book called The First 90 Days, and it's proven. So if the first 90 days is positive, they're far more likely to stay with you and do well. Can you hear me all right, Francis? Because it's just come up, my internet connection is unstable. Okay, do let me know if there's problems. So that's the first thing to get right, is think about their induction, think about their first 90 days and make it a positive experience, because if they are the right person, you want them to stay and you want them to perform. Generally, when things go wrong, like any relationship, it's because clear expectations weren't set. So they had a different expectation of what was going to happen and what the job was going to be like. And you had a different expectation of how they were going to be, and there's a mismatch. So if you can get that really clear and agreed right from the get-go, then that's a very good step to take. Start off on the right foot. So the second thing that I said I would talk about is skill versus attitude. So generally, if you've had some kind of practical element to their recruitment process, we should have established whether or not they can actually technically do the job. But generally, a lot of the time, and this is in all industries, where people don't work out, it's not because they can't do it, it's because their attitude is poor. They don't want to do it for a variety of different reasons. And it's the behavioral aspect that is not the greatest. And so this is where it's very useful to have a document such as this. This is one that we provide to all of our clients, or we can design them specifically for that business. As I say, in corporate land, it's called a competency framework. We call it the What Good Looks Like document. And it's a list of expectations under 6 competencies. So things like customer focus, communication, teamwork, and in this case, results focus. of what good looks like. So we've got examples here of things like has excellent attention to detail, always strives to do a good job, demonstrates an eagerness to learn and continuously improve. So these are behaviors that you're either seeing or you're not seeing, and then you've got a rating scale of 1 to 3. Just a word of caution here, you can use this with contractors, but you mustn't use it as kind of an appraisal document, because then you could fall into murky water around something called disguised employment. But it certainly can be used without the rating scales, and in terms of expectations. This is what we expect of our service providers, because that's effectively what a contractor is. They're just providing a service, but it provides that, again, it's that expectation setting. It's look, this is what good looks like around here. This is what we expect from a behavioral point of view. And again, if you're sharing that on the first day for them to take away and read, or you could even share it during the recruitment process, then it's very, very clear and upfront. And then you can use this also as a development tool to feed back on, you're doing really well in these areas. This is the kind of behavior that I'd want to see you work on, perhaps. And notice the language there. I'm not saying, look, this is something that you're not doing, or this is a weakness, or this really isn't good enough. All of those sorts of things are going to switch people off. But if we talk about it in terms of, this is something that I would like to see you do, then that's much more positive, and it's not showing judgment. Yeah. So that's the attitude and skill one. In terms of a technique, this is something that I think is the difference perhaps between being a manager and a leader. And so it's the difference between coaching somebody and telling them. So often what I find, people can get incredibly frustrated because it's like, I've told them a million times what I want. And if you tell somebody a million times, they're only hearing it, they're not seeing it written down. So they're probably just getting used to hearing it, and it's not sinking in. The difference between that and coaching is where you are asking questions to get somebody to think. So let me give you an example. Let's imagine that Bob calls you frequently, asking you the same question. Rather than slip into just giving the answer, just try asking them, well, what do you think, Bob? Just try that, and just keep silent and see what Bob tells you. Or if somebody is continually doing something that you've told them not to do, ask them, I'm intrigued. I've asked you to do it this way, and we seem to be having a bit of a problem. What's stopping you from doing it? Just asking questions is such a powerful technique, because it forces that person to think. Mm-hmm. And if they think and they come up with their own solution, they're far more likely to own it and follow through.
Yeah.
So that's the technique that I was alluding to. I am going through this at
what are some can you maybe give us some examples of some good probing questions that we might use with, when we want to try and get to the bottom of something, or just what's an example? I mean, you gave us one example. Are there any others?
Yeah, so if somebody, as I say, is doing something continually and you've had several chats with them about it, the first question I would ask is what's stopping you? What's getting in the way? Mm-hmm. And then you can follow up with 3 what else's. So what else, what else, what else? Because the first thing that people tell you is generally not actually what's stopping you. A lot of people, 50% of the time, they'll say it's time. We say, okay. It's not that they're deliberately lying, it's just that's the first thing that comes to mind. So I would say, okay, time's something that's stopping you. What else is stopping you? And they'll think of something else. And what else is stopping you? Generally, when you get to the third, that's when you start to get to the real crux of actually what's causing the problem. I mean, this is where we get into coaching, and obviously, coaching is, we can be learning this for years as a technique, but I think as a simple something that people can take away, just take away that question: what stops you? What else? what else, what else, and remain silent. Don't jump in, because you might find that invariably, if people are thinking it through, they might struggle to answer, because they have to think, you know, and that's a good thing. And just by providing these and seeing what they come up with, you know, can be very, very useful for both them and for you. And then a follow on from that is, well, what could you do about this? And again, what else, what else, what else? So it wouldn't be fair for me to go through the whole coaching framework, but it's, you know, I could fill a whole webinar just on that. But I think what stops you, what else, what could you do, what else, is something that's very easy to put into place tomorrow. You can start doing these things tomorrow.
Yeah.
And if somebody calls you and is forever asking you, you know, what should I do, what should I do, just flip it back to them. What do you think? And the other thing I would say is, if people say I don't know, if you did know, invariably they then tell you. So let's move on to structures and habits. So something that I'm a big fan of, and I call it like the water and the oil for the, like a car. Imagine your business is the engine of a car, you know, and you continually drive it and you don't put water and oil, it's going to break down. And running a business with people without spending time with them one-on-one on a regular basis, potentially it's going to start breaking down. Now, this doesn't have to be terrifically formal. Doesn't mean that you invite them into the office. In fact, I would, in construction and trade businesses, I encourage people to meet them in the cafe before you start your shift, take them for breakfast, take them for a coffee, go to the pub at the end of the day for a beer. It doesn't matter. It's just half an hour minimum with each of your team once a month will pay dividends, because it enables you to get to know them as people. And this is really just a check-in, you know, how are things going? Have you got any feedback for me? Is there anything that we're doing well, do you think? Is there anything that we're not doing so well that we need to focus on? So lots and lots of questions, again, from their point of view. And then obviously, if you've got feedback for them, you can provide it. And this should be a mix of both positive and constructive. Mm-hmm. So, you know, something I notice you're doing really well and you're doing a really good job on is this. Something I think, you know, you could think about, just watch out for, that type of language is this. And that will provide dividends, because pay dividends. It will enable people to tell you things that are perhaps bothering them, because you're building a stronger relationship. People maybe tell you things that you don't, you know, you weren't aware that were going on in the company. So it's a great source of keeping close to the coalface, as it were, and looking after your people. You know, it's any business is only ever as strong as its people. And to me, this is the oil and the water. So I think the next slide is about that. Yes, of finding out how things are going for them, providing feedback, finding out, yeah, what they want out of life. You know, who are they as people? What do they want? And it should be really them doing most of the talking, and again, you asking questions. I've put on here something called the emotional bank account. This comes from a book called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, and he talks about the relationships that we have with anybody, whether it's a personal relationship or in business, being like a bank account. And if you think every time that you do something that's appreciated, you put credit into that bank account, and if every time you're doing something that is not appreciated, you're taking a withdrawal. And that emotional bank account has to be in credit for the relationship to work well. And having a one-to-one, just dedicating half an hour to each person once a month, in most cases is a huge credit for that emotional bank account. People appreciate it, they feel valued, and there's a forum for them to provide feedback for you and have an outlet. Yeah.
Cool.
The next one, very similar, is team meetings. So I think team meetings are different because obviously it's getting everybody together, but I think these can be well, I think on the next slide I've got them. Great forums for solving company problems first and foremost. So rather than you as a business owner trying to come up with all of the solutions to company problems, you can drive yourself mad. Your solutions might not be the right ones. You might not fully understand the context of the problem. And by getting everybody together and saying, look, we've got this issue, guys, this is where we want to be, this is where we are, hearing different perspectives, sometimes it can completely change your view on something, because you thought it was X, and then after that discussion you realize it's Y. And so to throw it out to the team and say, look, this is the issue. What are everybody's ideas? What are everybody's thoughts on how we should be tackling this? Is great, because they feel valued, they're able to have input, and most importantly, they're more likely to then take ownership of it and actually solve it for you, rather than you say, right, we've got this issue, this is what we need to do. Sometimes that is the right thing, but a lot of the times it can be solved through group discussion. It's also a great forum for sharing updates on how the company is doing. That sometimes people say, oh, I'm a bit nervous about sharing financial information. My personal view is share as much as what you feel comfortable with, because people tend to appreciate and respect it, and then they understand, what you see is they have a better appreciation of how much it costs to run a company, and they might just think twice or think differently next time around, wasting materials or taking care of company assets. So yeah, my view is, you're all on a journey together. Share the vision, share how you're doing, and trust them, and it will be repaid.
Mm-hmm.
I think all of this boosts morale, improves communication and teamwork, and ultimately, if you share your goals, or even better, set the goals with the team, then you're all working towards the same things. So I know within the industry it can be tricky getting everybody together. I would say minimum once a quarter. So it doesn't have to be every month, but once a quarter. I mean, one of my clients, actually, they had some significant challenges with the team, and they did block out, I think it was the last 2 hours of every Friday. So they did effectively give up work, didn't book work in the diary, because it was so important that they worked on these issues. And my God, has it paid off. They're in such a different place now because they put the time into having those meetings. Any thoughts? I'm just babbling away here, Francis. Any questions or thoughts?
It just makes me think about how, when you're running a business, especially when you're the expert, like in trades, a lot of these businesses, they'll start out by being the expert, the hands-on person, right? The plumber, the heating engineer, who is more ambitious and then wants to build and grow business. And then what you start to see is actually all of these different components, right? All of these different moving parts that are really critical to get right, because the business very, very rarely just grows itself, right? And you then have to stop focusing on the mechanics and the service, and you really have to look at, how effective are you actually going to be a business owner and run your business. And it's so easy to forget, they might seem trivial, things like getting the team together every Friday, and saying no to business, like people with a short-term vision or haven't really understood how critical it is to keep your team aligned, right, and healthy as well. It's so easy to not do, right? Oh no, we'll just take that business. But actually, it could really be so detrimental to the long-term growth, especially when you leave problems unresolved, right? Because problems are a little bit like cancer, right? In a company, it's like very rarely they don't go away. by themselves,
Yeah.
and you need to nip them in the bud. And it takes a very, it just takes a very aware and conscious business owner to be thinking, no, actually, we're going to address problems, we're going to align the team, and you're going to lead the company. You might be a great plumbing engineer, but not so great at leading your employees, and it's just another skill, it's another mindset.
Absolutely. And I would think it's arguably one that you're continually learning, and you're always on a journey with. It's not like learning a piece of software and then you've learnt it. People are such a moving feat, and one size doesn't fit all. And with this company that I was talking about in question, I mean, it was actually, they were making a loss, and they've now gone to make a significant profit for 4 months on the trot. And it's only because of the work that they've done on the team. So if you think about it, those people are facing your customer every day. So if they're disengaged, that's going to come across and affect your business detrimentally, and potentially a reputation. And that can be, if it gets to that point, it's very difficult to turn it around, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like turning an oil tanker. So it even surprised me actually how much of a difference it was making financially. I mean, literally, they've gone from loss making to profit.
What do you think made the difference?
I think the business owner, he is a very people person, and he was willing to listen, but he's done quite a bit of work on himself, and he was willing to challenge the team and to take some, there were 2 people that were moved on as well, so to make some difficult decisions. But essentially he threw the problems out to the team and said, look guys, this is what is going on, and we can't have it. How we're going to solve it, how we're going to put it right. So he involved them in the solution. He didn't
empowered them.
Yeah, that's right. He didn't stand up every meeting and go, it's still rubbish and it's not good enough. He wasn't giving them a telling off at all. He was involving them as a team, saying, look, together guys, this is where I'm heading, this is where the company's heading, and this is what we need to work on, this is what's going on, and how do we solve it, and inspiring them, I guess. Okay. So the last element of this is motivation. So these are the 5 things that motivate or demotivate us, and I find it fascinating. It comes from a book called Your Brain at Work by David Rock. He's a neuroscientist. He got a bunch of leadership experts together with a bunch of neuroscientists around 2006, so it's 15 years now, I guess, ago. At the time it was quite groundbreaking. And they actually they wired people up, and they looked to see what was happening in people's brains whilst they were at work, and what neural pathways were being activated. And they discovered that when something called, and I'll come on to scarf in a moment, but when there was a scarf threat happening in the brain, the same neural pathway was being activated as if somebody was putting a gun to their head. It's really, really interesting. So so it could be something as simple as, I know one of the exercises they did was they'd have 3 people, and the person would ask 2 of them if they wanted a cup of tea, and ignore the 3rd person, and that was sufficient to activate this neural pathway, a threat. Because it's like, oh, why am I not being asked? So, and it shows it can be things that we do that we're not even aware of. It's not
absolutely
not in our intention either.
I've experienced this really, really dramatically myself from a personal point of view, because I was before setting my own business, Lead Hero, I was in quite a toxic corporate marketing role, in one of the big global players around. And a lot of it had to do with a lack of very bad leadership and communication, and not knowing what you were doing and where you're standing, things like that. And the thought processes that can go on, that were going on in my head, the stories that your brain is telling you about situations which are not, they're not based in any type of reality.
Yeah.
As well, they can actually lead you to believe things which are not true, and also take actions which are not effective and at worst quite destructive to you, because you're basically taking action based on beliefs that aren't based on any reality or any type of grounding. But your neural pathways, as you said, you know, you feel like you've got a gun to your head and you need to take some action. So your brain can trick you into all sorts of of things.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why it's so important not to make assumptions. We naturally do as human beings, but to try not to make assumptions when someone's behaving a certain way as to why they're behaving that way. You know, just stop and just sit down with them and just ask them in a nice way, you know, how's things going? What, you know, I've noticed, and try and come at it from a clean slate point of view. Try not to judge or assume, because
and there's also the lack of communication or the lack of leadership will also trigger all sorts of brain reactions and stories. I remember, and I know myself, like, I think that good leadership is actually quite rare. In my career of 25 years or so, I think I've seen maybe 2 or 3 great leaders in the businesses I've worked with, like in terms of the bosses who I've reported to. At most 99%, they have no training, they have no awareness, they've just been promoted into the role, they don't know how to manage a team or inspire a team. I remember in one of my jobs, I was hired, my boss was a real great guy, expert, but he didn't talk to me, right? And so in my probationary period, I was thinking, oh my God, are they going to fire me? Am I doing a good job? What's going on here? And every time I'd reach out to him, it was like, everything's fine. You know, like it was my vision of what was happening at work had nothing to do with where my boss was at. He was just not a good communicator.
Well, you'll find this, I think, quite interesting, Francis, because you haven't seen this, so because it plays directly into one of the elements of SCARF. So the research they did, Rock basically came up with this acronym, which is SCARF, which is referred to as SCARF rewards and SCARF threats. So it's the things that we place, different people place different levels of importance on each of these different elements. So maybe as I'm going through, we can have a think about what's in it. Was certainly a wake-up call for me, because I realized one of these is very important to me, which I perhaps wouldn't have realized when I was in corporate land. So the first one is status. So this is effectively where you feel you are in the pecking order. So going back to my example of not offering that person a cup of tea, some people, if they're not status motivated, they probably wouldn't even notice. But if they are, if they feel, oh, I don't matter, you know, why have those 2 people been offered a cup of tea and I haven't, then this is going to really upset them. So it's things to, you know, giving people extra responsibility if they're capable, job titles, those sorts of things can really motivate somebody who is status motivated. The second element, which ties in with what you were saying there, is certainty. So what they discovered is the brain likes to be able to predict what is going to happen next. And that's why in some organizations, you know, when they're going through, say, a situation such as a restructure or redundancy, some people cope with it fine, others really don't cope with it at all. And this is why it's so important if you communicate, and during times of uncertainty, you can never communicate too much. That's what I always say, over communicate, because otherwise it's exactly what you were just saying there. The brain starts to come up with its own story, and this is where you get gossip between people, etc. So important to have transparent, clear communication, so that people who are certainty motivated, that box is ticked. The next is autonomy. So this is all about freedom to make decisions. So people who are motivated by autonomy like to have responsibility, they like to have freedom within a framework to make decisions. And and so forth. A lot of people say, well, how can you tell who's motivated by what and by how much? I would actually just sit down with the person and ask them. I would share the SCAR framework and say, look, what's most important to you and what's not so important to you is the best way. But you might have if you've been working with somebody for some time, you've probably got an inkling of what motivates them. The next one is relatedness. So this is effectively how much you trust the people around you, and how much you see them as a friend. So I know that's often a question on employee engagement surveys that we ask is, do you feel they have a friend at work? Because if you do, then you're probably going to be more engaged in the workplace. So it's how much you trust your boss, how much you trust your peers, and things that you can do to drive trust, one-to-ones, team meetings, team socials. All of this helps build relationships and builds trust. And then the final element of SCARF is fairness. And so some people kind of see the world as not being fair and they're okay with it. Others really get upset if they think that people are being treated unfairly, or they're being treated unfairly or treated differently. So, this is things like, to bring it back to a practical level, importance to have pay structures in place, to have it clearly communicated what you expect, have a clear way of measuring it, annual appraisals, being clear around how you're measuring somebody's appraisal rating. All of those sorts of things would play to somebody's fairness button if that is indeed important to them. Those are the 5 elements of SCARF.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been going 40 minutes, Francis. I think we could perhaps open it up for questions.
Absolutely. If anyone would like to jump in with some questions for Alison or myself, or just have an open conversations, please, you can unmute yourself and
so yeah, anybody that's joining on Facebook Live, if you put the question in the group, but if you have joined via Zoom, then you've got the opportunity to put it in the chat or unmute, as Francis says, and actually ask it in person.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone?
Yeah, I'll just quickly say something about, it's interesting we're talking about motivation and demotivation probably more. Now, I'm the business owner, and I'm actually going through a wee bit of a situation at the moment with one of our customers, and I'm feeling hugely demotivated, and it's very difficult for me as the team leader to keep the guys up. But I'm very, very fortunate that I do. Well, my son's joined us tonight as well, and I have another 2 employees, and I'm very lucky that they are actually, as far as I'm aware anyway, still fairly motivated. But I'm finding it quite difficult, being the business owner and the team leader, to motivate myself. And I'm quite sure as time goes on, it's going to rub off. I know it does rub off a wee bit on the other guys, but it brings them down as well. And I'm finding it extremely difficult just now to keep myself up and keep going. I mean, have you got any hints and tips to just
yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry to hear that, Robert. I mean, I know what you do in your business model, so I'm presuming this customer is somebody that you work with ongoing.
Yeah.
It's not like it's a one job and then you move on kind of thing.
No,
okay. And what is it? I mean, just sharing the SCAR framework there. What is it that they're doing, do you think, that is getting to you?
Well, it's probably the full gamut there. There's poor communication. They're overload us with work. There's no proper scheduling. I mean, anything you can think of. In my opinion, they're doing it wrong. They're piling all the pressure on to us. I mean, some of it goes with the territory, because this grounds maintenance, it's very time critical, it's cyclical at this time of year, and just right at this moment in time, it gets a bit like this every year anyway, because it's a very busy time. But I think this year in particular, we're being demotivated financially. You're feeling, are you being valued by this customer? I mean, the whole range there, and it's an extremely difficult time we're going through just now.
And have you spoken to them about this?
Oh yes, they're not that receptive, I have to say.
Okay, interesting.
How important are they to your bottom line?
How Yeah, they're probably critical to our, they are quite a big customer for us,
Mhm.
and it's not a customer I can move away from very
Sure.
easily. Although
Yeah.
in
And
some
when
ways-
you say you've spoken to them, Robert, was that on the phone? Was it face
on
to
the phone,
face?
yes,
On the phone,
yes.
right? Okay.
Yeah, there's really
Um,
no face to face
Right.
to speak of.
Right. Okay. So tips. What I would suggest is if you've got I mean, I don't know if you've only got a relationship with one person in this business, but I'm guessing there's one person that's like your account manager or something, maybe like a key
Yes,
individual. I would ask for a meeting face to face on Zoom. The reason being, any sort of conversation like this, I think it's critical that you can see each other, because communication, as you'll know, as we talk about on the academy, it's not just the words, is it? 7% is the words of what people are saying. There's so much that you can pick up from body language and vocal tone.
yes, you're absolutely right. Text and email can be misconstrued,
Yeah, oh, very
misconstrued
much,
so
very
easily.
much. So if it was me, I'd want to get in front of them. I'd want to eyeball
Sure.
them. And similarly, in terms of, if you've got an employee, I would always start the conversation by asking them, how are we doing? How's it going from your perspective? So I'd give them an upfront that I'd want a meeting of at least half an hour. So you've got, you don't feel rushed. And I'd ask them, how's it going from their point of view? And what's most important to them about a contractor that they bring in, and what would they like to see improve or be different, or XYZ. So they've got a lot of psychology in this. They've got their opportunity to get it off their chest first, how they're feeling. It's a technique called seek first to understand and then be understood. It's a Stephen Covey technique. Now, they might say things that you don't like the sound of. So what you mustn't do is jump in, because then we get into a game of ping pong where they say something, we say something, they say something, we say, and it goes pear-shaped. So I would just have a notebook at your side, and I'd just make some notes as they're going through, but get them talking. And I'd give them a good 10-15 minutes to get off their chest whatever it is. I don't know what they're going to say. You might have an inclination of, if they've got some bugbears about things. Are they complaining, or what is it that they're doing that's...
Not really. It's just piling the pressure on. Just there doesn't seem to be any forward planning on their part,
Okay.
and
Right.
they'll put work in our direction with deadlines on it.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
I mean, there's money issues as well, because the value of the work that's coming in is diminishing all the time,
Right.
and they just seem to be requiring more and more for less and less.
Right. Okay. Okie doke. So again, we want to go back to this expectation. It's almost like resetting expectations. So we've allowed them to get off their chest how they think it's going, and that might last 5 minutes, it might last 10, it might last 15. Then I would say I'd actually ask for permission, and I'd say, would it be okay if I was to share some things how we think it's going from our point of view? Now, of course, they're going to say yes, but the very fact that you're getting them to say yes makes the brain more open to it. And I'd have probably 3 key things. So I'd say, look, we want to do a great job for you. There's some things that I think could be helpful, that would certainly be helpful to us in order to provide that service for you. One would be, from what you said, more notice. It'd be great if you could, and using language that's very soft. I'm sure you've got your own challenges at your end. I can appreciate, and blah 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 blah, all that, those sorts of words. But it'd be great if we could have, and then your wish list. But because you've gone in asking them how is it going from their point of view first, they're far more likely to be receptive to what you're then asking for. So that would be my tip. Do that and let me know how, because obviously you're on the academy, so you can let me know how you get on. I'll be intrigued. But yeah, ask for their time. Zoom meeting, eyeball. How is it going from your point of view? This is how we feel, and this is what we would suggest.
Yeah. Also, I guess if I can add my own little
Yeah, sure do.
one there, I would say to find a way to develop rapport and work on the rapport with whoever it is you're dealing with. And sometimes it might not be the number, your account manager, but there might be gatekeepers, or there might be other people around that you might need to bring on side, right? Especially in difficult situations. And it's sometimes it's about being strategic in your approach, because it might be that the person that you're dealing with may not be the person that can actually help you get to that outcome that you're looking for. It might be someone else. It might be their boss. It might be their boss's boss. And they don't even know that there's an issue, or they think everything's fine. So they could have their own problems with communication and leadership as well, right?
I think, Francis, you're certainly correct there, because I have raised issues before with the line management side of it, then it doesn't seem to be getting passed, being passed up the line properly.
That's the thing. And so I can't tell you how to develop rapport and build a relationship with someone else, but sometimes it could be maybe through a little sneaky, strategic way in to build a relationship with someone else in the team. At least even if it's not from a professional perspective, from a personal one, into getting to know them a little bit. And then you could ask, once you develop that relationship, you could be asking that person, oh, what do you think about? Oh, John, we are experiencing this and this, and we think that there could be a better way for you to get X, Y, and Z. What do you think? And it just, that's just an idea. I don't know if
it's really good advice. And I mean, what you're alluding to there is that's like organizational savvy, isn't it? That's how you navigate, I suppose, the political landscape of larger organizations. And
I mean, business is all about navigating that landscape, right? It is all about, it's a massive game, and where you put your pieces down, and what moves are you going to make? Because a bad client can really suck all of your energy out, and you're stuck with them, and it's really down to you to resolve the issue. This is the problem. It is down to you, and sometimes what you're doing, or the most obvious approach, isn't necessarily the most strategic approach if you want to win.
Well, that's good advice.
Good
advice. So
is there anybody, I hope that's helpful, Robert, a little, just
yes, it is.
It's not easy, definitely not easy.
Certainly it's quite a difficult situation we've found ourselves in at the moment, but I'm sure we'll get through it.
The other thing I would say is, being the business owner, and I'm not the most experienced business owner, but I invest in coaching for myself to help grow my business. And I've come to learn that being the business owner is very much about controlling your emotions, right? Because our brain plays all sorts of tricks on us, and our state, how we appear in our physical state. I mean, physical, are you standing upright, or are you hunched down? Do you have energy, or are you tired? All of that type of thing, how your state, you're going to see solutions if you have a good state. And if you let your emotions get you down, not only are you not going to have good ideas, but that will also infect your team.
Yes, that's why I'm quite concerned about at the moment, because I am aware that the way I must be appearing to the team at the moment is not in quite a good way. We need to get through that. And it's because there's nowhere for me to hide, Julie. We're such a small team.
Yeah.
We're all in the same band usually, and sometimes I'm venting off and giving away more than I probably should. So, and it's a really hard position to be in.
Well, that's great that you're very conscious of this. You know, you know it, and you also understand that this is not gonna, it's not gonna be productive for your business, maintaining that, you know, and so tomorrow, this can change immediately. Your problems won't go away, but your state can change right now. And tomorrow you'll be in the office. Yes, you'll have challenges and problems, but your state is going to be positive, energetic, and you're going to find solutions and work with your team to get the best out of everybody. And it's sort of your responsibility as a business owner not to project the business's problems in an emotional way, right? It's really up here. Then there's training and coaching, and I'm sure Alison has a lot to share on that as well. Because it's not just you, it's all CEOs, it's all business owners have to deal with the emotional side of.
Absolutely, because we're all humans at the end of the day, and yeah, it's
Like I get down when I lose a sale. I get up when I sell. When I have a new client, all of a sudden I'm having a great day. If I lose a sales call, I'm having a bad day. But now it doesn't work like that anymore because I've learned that it all doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's just how we present ourselves and the energy we project into the universe, to the world, to people is really important to keep it positive and up there.
Sound advice.
So I just went on a Tony Robbins event a few weeks ago. I'm like, oh, like, yeah, you know, and it's not easy, but it takes. What does anyone else on the call have anything to share about leadership, experience bad leadership, or maybe some good? We have maybe another 5 minutes or so. We're gonna get to the hour. Lewis, Andy, no?
I've just put a question on the chat.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see that. Let's see. Andy says, using the one-to-one forms, which are great every quarter. Okay, you're using the one-to-one forms, which are great every quarter.
Yeah.
If we review employees' performance and some are better than others, if we pay a bonus on this, will the team members be demotivated if we make public who's getting what? Right. So, you know, if some people are getting bonuses and others are not, if you if you make that public, how could that affect the team? Alison?
Yeah. So I think Andy worked with me for a while. He was a private client. I think it's all about transparency, isn't it? It's all about being really clear, and I'm trying to relate it to SCARF. It would certainly be the fairness element and certainty, be those two elements. So it's being really transparent and clear around what is the criteria for the bonus. So as long as everybody understands it, they can see that everyone's being measured fairly, and they can understand why a certain individual has qualified and they haven't, then there shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah.
Now, it will, if you're doing it purely on behaviours, Andy, they need to be crystal clear in terms of the feedback that you're giving around what you would need to see them do differently in order to qualify next time. And again, that language, it's just a subtle thing, but it shows that you're not writing them off. It's not you're rubbish. It's just you're not yet showing me this. Once you start showing me this, you will qualify too. So it's the clarity. I think it's perhaps trickier to do with something like behaviours because it's not as black and white, and it's reliant on someone understanding the concept rather than hard metrics. But it does come down to the quality of that conversation and the feedback that you provide.
Yeah. See, what was concerning me was that you know, tradesmen being tradesmen, they'll probably be talking to each other and saying, "Oh, well, what did you get? What did you get?"
Yeah, sure.
And you know, I didn't know, is it better to tell them, you know, this is private, this is between us, or is it better that well, I don't want to pitch them off against each other because, but then if they know that somebody, what I'm getting at is if they know somebody else in the team has performed better and I tell them in why they've performed better and that's why they're picking up more money, is that, could that be a, well, I guess it depends on the person, doesn't it? Because it could be a motivator or a demotivator, depending on what kind of person you are.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it matters if it's bonus or a pay review. You know, generally both of, well, certainly a pay review, an annual pay review, often is done on behaviours, and so I certainly wouldn't get into a conversation of saying, well, the reason why Bob's got it and you haven't is because Bob's doing this and you're not. I'm sure you know that. So I would always bring it back to them. If they say, but they're trying to bring Bob into the conversation, I would say, look, I'm just here to talk about you. And I'd love to, you know, give you a pay rise, but I need to be seeing this. I need you to be showing me this, and I've no doubt that you can do it. You know, let's have a talk about how we help you get there, kind of thing.
Yeah, great.
Welcome.
Okay.
Right. Well, it's 1 minute to 6, so I think
1 minute.
we need to wrap it up, Francis.
What a jam-packed
Absolutely.
hour.
Yeah.
Amazing. These things, the way they go, you see, we tackle a topic, open up to questions, inevitably we get into very, you know, sometimes deep conversations.
I was going to say, it's quite deep.
You know, because there's so many moving parts, isn't there? It's not one thing. People sometimes look for like one big solution, but it's not. It's a constant learning journey, right? Through
definitely where people are concerned. I mean, I think I put it in the invitation, you know, once you're managing people, some days you have to be the counsellor, some days the disciplinarian, some days the mentor, the trainer. You have to wear all of these different hats, and there's so much psychology involved in dealing with people, not necessarily just managing them, but just influencing people. And I think it's something we're always learning.
That's right. So next week, not next week, in 2 weeks' time, same time, Thursday, 5 o'clock, we are going to wrap it all up.
Yeah.
6 episodes, 6 big, huge parts of business growth. It's really the surface is what you need to know, but you could dive deep into each topic, and that's where Alison's full program comes into play, and you have like the bigger, deeper journey, longer, more evolved thing. And also Lead Hero, our marketing system for trades, goes deeper as well into real, you know, getting results, tactical automations, acceleration as well. But thank you very much to
thank
everyone
you,
on the
guys.
call.
Really good discussion.
Thank you for joining. Love that you joined the Zoom. And to everyone watching online, thank you. Have a great day. Have a great weekend, and see you soon.
See you soon, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.